5 dates. They're often bunched together, sitting higher, with a different shine than the other seasons this franchise has played football. The NFL Championships. It may be debated which was the most unlikely.
Sammy Baugh wearing his famed number 33. Crowd goes wild. The Redskins reserve leap to their feet. The world champion.
Which was the most perfect.
Open his back to throw it. Going deep. Touchdown Redskins Clark. The Redskins are the world champions. Super Bowl 26.
But only one can be called the first. This is Hail Tales, stories from Washington football history. The 1937 NFL Championship. It's 1937. Tensions that would lead to World War II are heating up. A new, exciting food product called Kraft macaroni and cheese has hit the shelves. And pro football is finding its footing in American culture.
I'm Chris Willis. I'm the head archivist at NFL Films.
The NFL of 1937, Willis explains, would probably be hard for football fans to recognize today.
So at this time in the mid-30s, the NFL was sort of on its way to becoming what you would think is a successful business model. They weren't the juggernaut as you see today with being the number one sport in the United States and maybe the number one sports in the world. In the 1930s, they were just coming off the Depression. The whole country and sports and the NFL were going through an adjustment. So what the stock market crash really did was focus the NFL on they had to be in the big cities to operate. They had to be like Major League Baseball. So they eliminated a lot of the small towns, like Canton, Dayton, and Rochester, all of those little ones, and sort of focused on the big cities. And Green Bay, because they were community owned, was the only small team to survive. So you had the two teams in Chicago, New York. At this point, maybe 1935, 36, you had Boston, you had Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. So it became more of like a 20-team league to really like an 8 to 12 team sort of league.
That's what's going on off the field. As for on the field,
it was pretty much single wing, players going pretty much both ways. So you didn't have to have full rosters. The rosters were about 16 players. So most of the players, once they were on the field, they didn't come out. It was real physical still. It was still predominantly a run game at the time. And then the rules were starting to separate from the college game. The college game was much more popular in the 20s and into the 30s, and they dictated how the game was played based on the rules. So that was a good sort of breakaway where they sort of wanted to make it more fan-friendly. The passing game was, you could throw from anywhere behind the line of scrimmage. The rosters and some of the better players now were coming into the league because they knew they would get paid, especially after the stock market crashed. And so that's where the NFL was sort of moving. They were moving sort of in a positive direction, a business we can sort of achieve similar to what Major League Baseball, which was the most popular sport at the time.
In 1937, there are 10 teams in the NFL, and one has just moved from Boston to Washington, D.C.
Boston was just a pro town. They cared about Boston college football. They didn't care about pro football at the time. So Marshall was definitely frustrated. The crowds were 3, 4, 5, 6,000, which at this time in the NFL in the mid-30s, they were past that. Chicago was getting 20,000. New York was getting 20, 25,000. So Marshall just got fed up. He was building a good team. In 1936, they had a team with Cliff Battles at halfback, and they actually won the Eastern Division, was playing the Packers in the championship game. But Marshall got so mad at the city, he moved the game actually to New York because they would get a bigger crowd. They would try to get a little bit more money from the championship game so they could split it with the players. They did lose the game. Don Hudson and the Packers won. By this time, Marshall was like, yeah, I'm done.
He packed up and they moved to D.C.
Washington football historian Mike Richman.
His wife actually influenced it in part. She wanted him to come to D.C., and they packed it up and moved to the nation's capital.
That's when the Washington Redskins were born.
This Washington team is strong, having made it to the NFL championship the year prior. The coach is a tough and fiery former player named Ray Flaherty.
A grim business is this professional football, and a hard taskmaster is Ray Flaherty, the Redskins coach. On Fairlawn Field, where George P. Marshall's hirelings practice 4 hours each day for 60 minutes of football each week, Flaherty tolerates no trifling. So it's woe to the bruiser who doesn't throw a proper block into the defensive end, or the lineman who waits a split second before starting his charge. That costs the offender a fine that may be $1, $2, or even $5.
On the roster are stars like Cliff Battles,
Big, blonde Cliff Battles, the most deceptive thing in moleskins.
Wayne Milner,
Then came the prettiest play of the afternoon. Milner raced inside for a Phil Chalk pass.
and Turk Edwards.
A towering figure wearing the number 17 of Turk Edwards.
In the 1937 NFL Draft, Washington has a chance to add some new weapons. The most potent of those comes with the 6th overall pick. His name is Sam Baugh.
One passing thread is slinging Sammy Baugh, who made history at Texas Christian University. This is the grip, with fingers spread wide, that gives the maximum control in passing. Sammy spots the receiver as he draws the ball back behind his ear and lets it fly.
Every time he throws the football, completes a pass, gains a yard, scores a touchdown, Baugh sets the world record.
Coach Flaherty confesses that you could have knocked him over with a birdseed when he realized that the Redskins had won Baugh on the Professional League's draft list. It was my turn to pick. With Baugh not yet drafted, I thought I was dreaming. The league president said, "Flaherty, who is the Redskins' choice?" Well, by God, I think I bellowed Baugh so loud that it must have been heard downtown, and we had him.
He had a sterling career at TCU. He's this skinny kid, probably weighed 170 when he got to the Redskins.
Joe Hawley, longtime journalist who has written for the Houston Chronicle and the Washington Post. He is the author of Slingin' Sam, The Life and Times of the Greatest Quarterback to Ever Play the Game.
Became an All-American. TCU, played in the Cotton Bowl, and the Redskins were aware of him and signed him. And yet, at that point, he still wasn't sure whether he wanted to play football because he was a good baseball player. And back then, as you probably know, football players didn't make that much money, and most of them had to work somewhere else during the off season. And he was thinking maybe the St. Louis Cardinals, who had offered him a contract, would be a better bet for him. Not only because they'd probably pay him better, baseball was more popular than football in those days, but he would probably have a longer career because you didn't get hurt in baseball the way you do in football.
The decision is hard, but he chooses the NFL. And his play is boggling to the mind at that point.
Baugh still, added a flair that the game had not seen with his ability to pass.
It's not an exaggeration to say that Sammy Baugh was the Babe Ruth of professional football. In the same way that Babe Ruth changed the way the game was played, Sam was the same way. And the ball looked, it was more round, so it was hard to get a hold of the ball and throw a football the way Patrick Mahomes does or Tom Brady. And he could get his hands around the ball. As we said, he's also a baseball player, so he's got a good arm, and he wasn't afraid to throw the ball. And that opened up the game and changed it forever.
Baugh's killer arm, Battle's sensational rushing, Turk Edwards' imposing presence, Riley Smith's production all over the field. The Burgundy and Gold get the results it needs throughout the regular season.
Smith's 60-yard run decides in Thriller. Invaders held on goal line. Baugh, important factor. Cliff Battles thrills with long runs. Baugh, Edwards, Milner also play brilliantly in the rain. Possibly the pressure was just too great for the Indians, who, although they outplayed the last place club in every offensive department, failed to. Washington beats Eagles. Get revenge. Redskins back boots ball from 27-yard line in closing minutes. Brooklyn line falls apart in final half. Baugh and Irwin score first. Last 5 minutes of play sees wild scramble for victory. Cliff Battles, hero of second half rally. 30,000 crowd to see Redskins meet Packers. Washington finds its football team.
The Burgundy and Gold goes 7-3. They then travel to New York for the Eastern Conference Final and trample the Giants.
Again and again, Washington's Redskins swept down the field this afternoon, driving New York's Giants before them in a wild, dazzling, and relentless scoring spree. By the startling and near incredible score of 49-14, the Washington team smeared New York's hopes of victory, left their foes dazed and bewildered, and sent the 8,000 Washingtonians among the 58,285 in the stands joyously stampeding onto the field at the finish.
Washington books its ticket to Chicago to face the Bears for the 1937 NFL Championship.
For Chicago, it was a big deal. The Bears were well written about. House made sure that was the case. He had a great team. He wanted fans to come out. For the city and for the teams, this was something that was sort of the top news in the sports section, because the NFL was like trying to build the brand, and the championship game was their World Series. So by 37, this was one of the key dates on the sports map.
It was in the worst of conditions. Wrigley Field was covered with ice, snow, and as Sammy Baugh told me in an interview in the early 2000s, there were like little pebbles on the field. Everybody got sliced up in one way or another that game.
Arthur Daly of the New York Times wrote that, quote, "The gridiron was like a skating rink." The players actually end up wearing sneakers to improve traction on the ice.
The Bears had tried to get it in shape with hay, and for a team like Chicago that runs over you, it's not nearly the disadvantage it is for a team that relies on passing routes and guys trying to get open.
These teams certainly had different qualities to them, and the storylines heading into this championship game were intriguing.
Today, you would have a really good time with the X's and O's shows to say, hey, what's going to be the most important aspect of this game? First, I think you had Sammy's passing ability. You had to be aware of that. He was throwing to Wayne Milner, was an All-Pro in. Charlie Malone was also an All-Pro at times. But then you also had Cliff Battles in the running game. So you had to be aware of maybe the best overall runner in the league in 1937 in Cliff Battles. So, but then the other thing is the Washington defense against the Bears. The Bears were a juggernaut. They were up there with Washington in the Western Division. And they also had Bronco Nagurski, probably the most physical player in the league. They had a reputation, who was also at that time in 1930 was the world wrestling heavyweight champion. So he's going back and forth between wrestling and playing football. You had to stop Nagurski.
They were the monsters of the Midway, and their coach George Halas, his approach to the game was, for example, when he's going to play someone like Sammy Baugh, knock him out of the game, hurt him, get rid of him.
The monsters of the Midway versus the brand new team from Washington, D.C.
The very first play of the game when Washington has the ball, and they were backed up. I think they were on their 1 yard line, and he lines up in punt formation, first down. And back then that's not unusual. You play for position. So Sammy lines up to punt, but he doesn't. He throws a pass that ends up a 42-yard completion, and the play was sort of symbolic. It was a message to the Bears that they were going to play their game. They weren't intimidated, and Sammy was someone to be reckoned with.
Baugh faked a pass and ran left tackle for 3 yards. Battles board center for 2 yards and a first down on the Bears' 10. Battles ran right tackle for 3 yards. Baugh aimed a pass at Battles, and Manders knocked it down. Baugh handed the ball to Battles on a reverse, and Battles dashed around the weak side of the line for a touchdown, diving over the goal, untouched. Riley Smith sent a placement through the posts for the extra point. Score, Redskins 7, Bears nothing. 7 minutes of the first quarter remained.
Washington throws the first punch, but Chicago would come roaring back.
Masterson passed to Mansky, who made a shoestring catch in Baugh's territory, slipped on the Redskins 40, regained and ran to the Redskins 19 before Baugh brought him down.
Nagurski swept around left end for 9 yards before Battles bumped him down. Manders shot through a huge hole at right guard for 10 yards and a touchdown.
7-7. The game is heating up. Tempers flare, and players are hungry to win at all costs.
There was one play where the fearsome Bronco Nagurski comes, he's running through the middle of the line, and the only one between him and the goal line is the safety man, skinny Sammy Baugh. No one has touched Bronco as he gets up ahead of steam, and Sammy has to somehow try to tackle him, and somehow he kind of finally brings him down. It's torture. And after the game, Sammy and Bronco were talking, and Sammy says, "Hey Bronco, did you realize nobody touched you before you got to me?" And Bronco said, "Yeah, that was the plan, for me to run over you and knock you out of the game." So that's what the quarterback, the most valuable player on the team, had to deal with every game.
The icy conditions don't help the brutality of the game. The Burgundy and Gold struggle to respond after the Bears tie it. And instead,
Wilson intercepted Baugh's pass to Battles.
Chicago goes ahead. What's more, Baugh gets his knee banged up and has to leave the game.
At the end of the half, the game belonged to the Bears by a score of 14-7, with the Redskins seemingly en route as Nagurski and Manders and Nolting and Masterson poured through the Washington line and bullied their way into the lead.
Halftime. A break from the cold. A chance to regroup. A rousing speech from Coach Ray Flaherty. 30 more minutes of football to play. The third quarter starts on a high note for Washington as Baugh returns, and the quarterback plays like a man possessed.
Baugh was sensational that game. His passing was 17 of 34, 352 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 of his touchdown receptions were by Wayne Milner, the great Redskins receiver. And Milner was known as, quote, the money player. When he was in college at Notre Dame, he caught 2 touchdown passes in a 1935 win over Ohio State, which was one of the so-called games of the century. So he came through in the 37 championship game as well. He caught 2 touchdowns from Baugh that day, 2 long ones, a 55-yarder and a 77-yarder. And both of them he outraced the defenders after catching the pass from Baugh. One of those receptions was on the screen pass that was invented by the Redskins, and it was unveiled that day.
In the third quarter, Milner scores, then Mansky for Chicago, then Milner. It's 21-21. The clock's ticking down on the period. Washington has the ball.
From a spread formation, Irwin charged center for 9 yards. Irwin slammed through center for 6 and a first down on the Redskins' 36.
The offense is marching down the field.
Baugh passed to Malone for 11 yards. Milner took a pass from Baugh for 7 yards.
Chunk by chunk. Chicago can't contain the unit. And then
Baugh faked a short pass to Malone, then wound up again and fired a long one to Justice, who took the ball on the Bears' 11-yard line and galloped to a touchdown.
Sam Baugh to Ed Justice for 35 yards. Washington goes up 28-21. All this action in the third quarter. Francis Stan of the Evening Star calls it, quote, probably the best 15 minutes of play in history. The Bears panic in the fourth quarter. Instead of relying on the run game that had made them so successful all season, they try to pivot to passing more and fail. Their final passing attempt is picked off by Washington's Riley Smith. That seals it.
The Redskins win. There were 3,000 Washington fans who had gotten on a train in Union Station and traveled west to Chicago. You know, they were ecstatic. They too had survived the cold, probably with a bit of liquid refreshment to keep them going.
The celebrations were a little different back then. For example, there wasn't a victory parade with the team in the immediate days following.
Washington will have no chance to acclaim until next fall the Redskins team that today won the National Professional League Championship. The entire squad of Redskins will disband here tomorrow to meet again on the Pacific Coast within 2 weeks, where they will play several exhibition games.
And as was tradition then, the NFL championship winner qualified to play a picked team of college all-stars the following summer. A pros versus amateurs showdown. Washington would lose that one, 13-7. But as for the NFL championship in Chicago, the discomforts of that freezing win continued to sting after the final whistle. There were plenty of injuries to nurse. Plus, the harsh game day environment actually affected Washington's earnings.
When the championship game is over, the players actually get part of the gate. So that was because the gate was a little bit low. The Washington players, yes, got $225 for their winning effort, which actually was, I think, like $30, $40 less than what the Packers got in 1936. You would think there would be more, but because they had more fans in New York for that game, they only got $225. And then I think the Bears were, it was like $127 or something, like $125 or something for losing. So it wasn't as big a moneymaker because of the fans and the attendance, but I guess $225 extra is $225 extra.
Despite the ice skating rink field and Chicago's determination to literally run their opponent into the ground, Washington's passing game took center stage in the win. Slingin' Sammy Baugh showed just how powerful throwing the pigskin could be, and the game never looked back.
I think Sammy's performance, and that's what makes Sammy a charter member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, is his performance. He threw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and it proved to the league, and especially George Halas on that sidelines that day, this is where the game's moving.
Sammy Baugh wearing his famed number 33. Crowd goes wild. The Redskins reserve leap to their feet.
Sammy's advice to the boys who would become good passers is simple. Just keep throwing the ball, he says. That's what I did.
For the Burgundy and Gold and the nation's capital, 1937 is the year so many of the memories, the loyalty, the passion, the singular pursuit of success can be traced back to.
It was the first championship for a pro sports team in D.C. since the 1924 Washington Senators won the World Series. The fact that this was their first year in the nation's capital, it's one of the reasons that people say the interest in the team was passed down from generation to generation, because they had that dominance through that era.
Chicago, December 12. Managing Editor, Washington Post, Washington, D.C. Dear Sir, we would be deeply grateful if through the columns of the Washington Post, you would express our gratitude for the season-long support given to our team by the Washington public. We are especially pleased that we have won the National Professional Championship for Washington, and please believe us that the moral support rendered us by the people of Washington was a huge factor in our successful season. Most sincerely yours, signed,
Ray Flaherty,
George Marshall,
Slingin' Sammy Baugh,
Ernie Pinker,
Ed Justice,
Jim Barber,
Turk Edwards, Ed Michael,
Charlie Malone,
Cliff Battles,
Les Olson,
Chuck Bond,
Don Irwin,
Max Krause,
Vic Carroll,
George Smith,
Jim Karcher,
Dixie Howard,
Bob McChesney,
Riley Smith,
Bill Young,
Ben Smith,
Ed Cool,
Wayne Milne,
Henry Krause,
Eddie Kahn,
Jack Copey,
Roy Baker,
Harold J. Donovan,
Barney Gretzky.
This episode of Hail Tales was narrated, produced, and researched by me, Hannah Lichtenstein, senior copywriter for the Washington Commanders. It was produced and edited by Jason Johnson. Additional editing by Nick Lianos. Executive producers are Ryan Yoakum and Kevin Klein. Additional voiceover help comes from Bram Weinstein. Graphics designed by Zach Osborne and Matt Cashman. Thank you to our guests for their contributions, and thank you for listening.